and they're hoping at 8 o'clock people start leaving, listening to the mayor's message, listening to the message of Police Chief Paul Pazin. But again, it doesn't look like anybody here is getting ready to leave. And let me paint another picture. This is going to be a little blunt and brutal, but many of the people down here right now are not the kind of people you're inviting to your Thanksgiving dinner. This is a group
Wow.
of people that are looking to create trouble, and that's what's happening out here right now.
And a dramatic scene, Tony, that we can see from Air Tracker 7. As you were zooming in through the trees, you could almost see the fence, but people have taken road closure, like roadblocks, as well as sections of chain link fence, and are creating a bit of a wall, a barricade across Lincoln. And then about a half block down, there's that line of law enforcement. As now we get closer, only a minute away from this curfew, we expect that police, if they do make any moves, will include tear gas to try to disperse this. But now a barricade has been put up along Lincoln by protesters.
We're not 1 minute.
As we get closer to this 8 o'clock. Tony, can you see what that all looks like? Tony Kowaleski on the scene, actually speaking with a bystander.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
Speaking with a bystander at that time. Tony, can you
Ask
see
that question again, please?
Can you see the fencing and the barricade that these protesters have moved up now onto Lincoln?
Wow.
I have not seen the fence. We are north of Colfax and Broadway. I can see that there's some movement of people. And
there was fence over there. There is fence over there.
Okay, my photographer is basically saying they're now putting up fences over there on the west side of the Capitol building. So again, things appear to be elevating as we get closer to that 8 o'clock hour when people are told they must leave, and we're watching it closely.
It is 8 o'clock right now
on the west side.
You can hear them howling. This is the Denver
It is
howl.
8 o'clock,
Right at 8
and you're
o'clock.
hearing people say.
This
Let's
is a Denver
listen.
tradition right now.
A lot of irony here that a tradition that was started to thank first responders for their work during a pandemic is now signaling a curfew where it is now illegal for people to be out protesting, yet we have not seen much movement at all other than a fortification, if you will, of protesters along Lincoln. There's that line, and at the front of that line along Lincoln on the protester side of things are road blockades and sections of chain link fence that protesters have brought in or broken down potentially from other places and have started piling up. Lance Hernandez is out there. Lance, what can you see from your vantage point?
Well, we've seen more people rush up toward the Capitol, and as you heard some of those explosions in the background, they still continued moving up there. You know, about 50 minutes ago, I talked with a couple of people, asked them where they were from. They said they were from Aurora, and I asked, how long are you planning to be here? And they said, we're going to be here all night long. We have a right to be here. These are folks from Aurora. Now, just a few minutes ago, we had gone out to the car to try to charge up our phone batteries, and on our way back in, we saw a number of people coming in with gas masks on their heads, getting ready to wear those. A few people were leaving, but more people were coming in. It looked like they were prepared to be here for the duration. We'll see what happens. You know, if there is plans to use tear gas to try to move the crowd out away from the Capitol, there are a number of people that are equipped with face masks themselves that no doubt will try to stand their ground against police. So there is that element prepared to disobey the orders of the city and to go ahead and go toe-to-toe with police. So we'll see what happens. We're hearing the loudspeakers right now. But that's one of the protesters across the street using a loudspeaker. It's not the officers themselves.
I was going to ask,
but you know that
heard
police
the
are preparing.
Have you heard the officers on
We've not
loudspeakers
heard.
yet?
We have not heard any officers on loudspeakers yet, but we do see a lot of officers lining up on the north side of the park, a number of vehicles over there with flashing lights. So we're keeping our eye on that.
And Lance, from your vantage point on the ground, I know that for a while there was a lot of scattering of people, and it appeared that people were simply waiting for 8 o'clock. There wasn't a whole lot of organization, yet as we got closer and closer to 8 o'clock from our view in Air Tracker 7, especially with this barricade, people began to once again almost organize, if you will, and form a larger group. Have you seen that? Has it gone from dispersed to a more united front, if you will?
I could tell you that there was that big crowd earlier this evening in front of the Capitol. That's when the whole Capitol, hundreds and hundreds of people were there. And then when we started to see it disperse, part of the crowd actually went down to Lincoln and over toward Civic Center Station. And another part of the crowd apparently started going toward downtown, the 16th Street Mall or other locations, because a little bit later they started marching back, and then the crowd at the state capitol started growing again. I wouldn't say that the crowd over there right now is as big as it was earlier this afternoon, but it's certainly bigger than it was when it started dissipating, when we saw it dissipating a little bit earlier.
It seems like they've almost consolidated there behind this fence that we're looking at right now, where there's a roadblock, a barricade set up, and they've taken the fences that were up around the park and sort of put them together to form their own blockade across the street, Lance.
Well, I'm not in Veterans Memorial Park. I'm over here at Civic Center Park, but I can tell you there is a big crowd over there, and we'd heard that officers were starting to put up fences around the state capitol themselves, and when shortly after that we saw the massive crowd starting to head over there as well. But you just know some of these folks that are here tonight, they're prepared to stay here. They're preparing for something themselves.
Yeah, no signs of this slowing down anytime soon. Thank you, Lance. And let's go over to Denver 7's Sloan Dickey. Sloan, where are you and what are you seeing?
We're still on Broadway and 14th. It appears as though the police have turned their lights on. I can't tell if they're slowly moving forward or not, but they're certainly making their presence known simply by turning their lights on right now. That's been kind of a tactic over the past 2 days. They'll move into an area, be quiet for a bit. Oh, we see some crowds moving now. I'm not sure why,
and Sloan,
but we have seen crowds starting to move.
Sloan, we wanted to cut away from you for just 1 second, because as we can see now, the law enforcement is moving. We saw the tear gas being deployed all around that fence that was built up, that blockade, if you will, of fences. As now you can see them pushing that right through. Lance Hernandez, we can see them demolishing that barricade and moving in.
They are. We see police officers moving in from the north side. They're sweeping in from the north side toward that memorial itself. We see smoke over there. I'm seeing some projectiles being thrown back toward police officers, but now there's just a loud flashbang, more tear gas, and people are starting to run out of Veterans Memorial Park to the south side of that park and back over here to Civic Center Park.
It's interesting, the chief of police said they would be exercising patience for the people who don't leave. It looks like before they're exercising patience, though, they're going to go ahead and put out some tear gas, see how many people will leave of their own accord.
And they are now taking apart that barricade, the biggest group that we had seen within the last hour or so was built up behind that barricade, and it appeared that police simply weren't going to have face off with them, and then they fired that tear gas. And Lance, from your shot, you can now see it appears to be SWAT all over the steps of the Capitol.
We see SWAT officers on the steps of the Capitol, and we see SWAT officers just across the street from where we are over here in Veterans Memorial Park. A number of people yelling, "Who's going to police the police?" Other people responding, "We are, we are." But you can see the chanters out here, some throwing bottles, some throwing water bottles at police themselves, but police in riot gear right across the street. People chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot." But this is after some of them have already tossed bottles at the police officers themselves.
And Lance, this appears to be similar to what we saw earlier when police swept about halfway through Veterans Memorial Park. The only difference here, they appeared to go full bore after that barricade, which they are now taking apart by these road closed barriers. But then still, we see now another one being moved just into the frame of your shot.
Yep, they're setting that. I think that was set up for traffic control a little bit earlier, because Broadway has been shut down for hours. There's no traffic on Broadway itself from about 16th Street all the way down to, I would say, 13th Avenue. And I'm quite sure it's the same with Lincoln Street on the other side of Veterans Memorial Park. But the crowd itself has moved to the south side of Veterans Park, and officers themselves are just in a line with their shields, with their helmets and face guards, just standing on the left side of the center sidewalk, just this side of the Veterans Memorial itself. and we'll see what happens if they start moving south. They may try to move the protesters out of the south side of that park, or they may just hold their ground here until they decide what other steps they're going to take.
And considering we've actually seen them being hit with bottles, we know they're exercising restraint. Let's go ahead and send it over to Tony Kovaleski. Tony, what have you got?
Yeah, Jacqueline, the push has started. You can see law enforcement with vehicles behind us. You can see they're pushing people this way. The backup, let me walk around here. They're trying to get them outside of the downtown perimeter. They have pulled some of their canister guns.
Yeah, keep
People
moving,
are
Tony.
moving as we're trying to get west of the Capitol. We're heading now towards the city and county building. They're clearly moving in with more vehicles, more law enforcement. They're pushing that perimeter as far west as they can. There's been some pushback, but so far it's been fairly peaceful. Nothing's been thrown at law enforcement at this point. They are clearly, this is the plan, to push people out of the perimeter. We've got law enforcement about 4 blocks from here that have shut off traffic. And again, you can see as we turn the camera here, officers moving arm by arm, continuing to push the crowd further away from the Capitol building. We're now getting closer to 15th, and the crowd is backing down, which is a good sign.
It is a good sign.
And you can see that line from Air Tracker 7. That appears to be off of Lincoln, where police have moved past that barricade where Tony is. They also appear to be then moving people out, then even closer to the south, to the city and county building, as he had mentioned, walking arm by arm. So obviously, Tony, law enforcement didn't wait long to make moves after this 8 o'clock curfew started.